Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode one of Inception Point. So, our guest today is Mark Arrowsmith. He's a friend of mine who we go back to 2013 as we were both freshmen at Drexel University in Philadelphia. Mark, you want to do an introduction of yourself? Kind of give us
Yeah,
a
mate, for sure.
background.
Yeah, mate. Thanks for having me on, especially as your first guest. I love the name Inception Point. It's awesome.
Thank you.
My name is Mark. So I was born in New Zealand, but I grew up in different parts of Asia growing up. And then I went to uni in the US. I spent my first year in Philly. That's how I met you, actually.
Yeah.
I think you were one of my first friends that I made when I was there, especially in the business school. And then since then, I've graduated 2017. I worked in Thailand for a while, and now I've been working in Singapore ever since. Work in management consulting, and I just love bodybuilding, fitness, and started when I was about 18. More seriously, I was always into running and fitness growing up. I'd say bodybuilding is when I started when I was 18. 25 now, so I've been a solid, consistent 7 years. That's I'd say that's me in a nutshell right there.
I still remember we were freshmen. You were on Drexel's track team at that point, and you guys used to
Yeah,
go on the indoor track on third floor of the gym. Fun
yeah,
times.
man. They were. I think that was because I was super into track growing up, and at that point, you probably knew me then as a pretty skinny guy. I think I even perceived you as quite a buff guy at the time, actually. Um,
Dude,
and
I
I
wish.
think that no, I mean honestly, that's how I did perceive because we went to the gym. We saw each other at the gym and stuff, and I'd see you like hitting arms and stuff, and I'd be like, oh fuck, man, like. But I think on the track team, I was like really obsessed with trying to get better there, but I wasn't super happy. But at the same time, it was like you try to do the best at something you're good at. So I was trying to run, trying to be on the first team, and then that summer when I actually transferred to Northeastern, I was back in New Zealand and I was doing nothing. Like I literally was doing nothing. And basically, I was with my parents. We were moving into a new house. I was just helping them move in. It's quite cold, so when it's winter in the US, it's winter
Yeah.
in New Zealand, and then vice versa. Um,
Summer in
and
New Zealand. Summer in New Zealand was winter in the U.S. Winter in the U.S.
yeah, yeah,
Summer in New Zealand.
yeah. So during the summer break, when I was back in New Zealand, it was very cold. And basically, I was just kind of like, I was running like 10, 20K a day still, like consistently. But I didn't really know what I was doing. And one day, my dad was like, "Hey, do you want to come to the gym with me?" And there was like this really shitty gym in this place called Mapua in New Zealand. And he drove me down there, and he was just show. I remember he was just showing me very basic movements. He showed me how to squat. I couldn't even squat the bar. I was like, like dumbbell press. I was like, I couldn't do anything, but I was really trying. I was doing my best, and my dad told me something that I'll never forget till this day. I did this one set on incline dumbbells, right? And I was just going. My form was probably not great. I was probably putting myself at risk of injury, but I was just giving my absolute everything till I was like red in the face. I had like some tears in my eyes, and I remember putting the dumbbell down. And then my dad said that but actually before I say what he said, he used to own the Goldstream franchise for New Zealand and Australia when he was younger, and he was 24 when he owned the entire franchise.
Nice.
Um, yeah, but then basically, long story short, we could do a whole other segment on this, but I'll make it very short. The whole economic crash hit, and then basically my parents had nothing. My dad was like sometimes sleeping out of a car, things like that. He has a huge success story, but anyways, he used to train with a lot of the big guys. He met Arnold. He trained with Lou Ferrigno. Lou
So,
Ferrigno came to New Zealand. Yeah. He hosted Lou Ferrigno in New Zealand for a couple of weeks. Bob Paris, he met Arnold once. He trained with him in the actual Gold's Gym in America once. So that's his whole background. So he used to be quite into bodybuilding, but he was more into like actually the federation and running the shows.
yeah, for sure.
Looked really good then, still looks really good now. But anyways, he basically, so anyways, I knew that background about him. And then after I finished that set, he said, just very offhand, he said, wow, that was one of the hardest sets I've ever seen in my life. It was a very offhand comment. And I remember I was like, okay, cool. And I went to the bathroom and I kind of looked at myself in the mirror and something clicked for me where I was like, oh, actual trait. And it just clicked for me. And then I went back in and then I just started trying to understand the movements. And then I looked at old pictures of my dad that night. He took me through all these pictures and I was just like, wow, I would love to look this way. But it felt more than like the physical. It was like, wow, if you like really commit and do your best, you can look this way.
Hmm.
So that was kind of how my whole journey started. Then I went back to Northeastern when I did my first semester, second semester, and I was obsessed. I was like, to the point where I look back now and it probably wasn't the healthiest thing. Like I was very like, it was wake up at 4 a.m., go to the gym, go back, study, all that thing. But I became a better student. Like I graduated at 3.9.
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks, but I had no social life. But I think it just made my life. It changed my life in terms of like discipline, understanding that if you do your best, all that whole thing. But yeah, that's how it started, and then it just kind of grew from there. And then after a couple of years, I was like, I actually want to become very knowledgeable in this craft. So I took it very seriously, not just like showing up, but actually learning. And then over the past like year and a half, I started more of like a coaching service and kind of like sharing my knowledge with people. And yeah.
No, dope. Yeah, no, for sure. So no, I get that entirely. Like I used to tell my dad, I'm like, hey dad, like, if you would actually start working out, because my dad was more of an athlete than he was a bodybuilder.
Mm,
For him it was literally hours a day playing cricket, playing field hockey, playing some sport rather than more than bodybuilding at his point. Um, so for him that kind of rubbed off on me as well.
mm,
For me though, it was literally the starting point for me was always into sports. I was played soccer as a kid, went transitioned to rugby when I was
mm,
a sophomore in high school, roughly around 2010,
mm,
2011. Started transitioning to rugby. What I kind of figured at that point was like, if I'm going to play a sport like rugby, I kind of need a little bit more muscle on my body because I was 5 foot, maybe 5'8", weighing about 135, 140 pounds,
oh
scrawny
wow,
kid at
right.
that point.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
for me, it was literally my lifting wasn't so much in bodybuilding. My lifting and my fitness journey started more as like training to get to a point where I could protect myself on a field.
Mm,
Embarrassing story though was like the real point, which for me was, even though I was playing soccer, I remember I was at the park in my community, and we used to play basketball all the time. I grew up with 20 guys playing
mm,
basketball on one hoop. Everyone plays pickup. Um, Finished up. I was tired, but one of my friends goes, "Well, why don't we have a wrestling match?" Guy beats me hollow. Like I stood no chance. And the thing is, I look back at it and I'm like, wait a minute, like I can totally take this guy now. But that point really was the inception point for me, which was like, this is where I felt, wait a minute, I can't be getting pushed around. And especially because right after that I started playing rugby. I was like, if I really want any chance of surviving on a rugby field, I have to start lifting. So for me, that's where my
yeah.
fitness journey started. But it was sort of weightlifting and such. But it really, the bodybuilding aspect of it still hasn't hit me yet, only because I
Mm,
still am playing rugby. I do have a tournament coming up in about 2 months. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it still happens. But
mm.
that was for me. But no, no, that's so cool that your dad actually like hosted Lou Ferrigno and like lifted with Arnold in California and when he was in New Zealand.
Yeah, yeah. No, man. I think no, I mean, as what you're saying, I think I actually remember in my first year in Drexel, like I do remember having a conversation with you once, like I genuinely do, about because at that point I went to the gym to like do planks and run on the running
Yeah.
machine, right? And then the only people I knew that would do weights was you and my old roommate, right? So I kind of like watch you guys and I'd see what you were doing. And you were doing a lot of like very, I guess, high functional movements and stuff like that. So I think of what you're saying, like kind of like to make you a better rugby player, or rather to like make you better at your own performance. Obviously, your training would be looking very different. And then there was the polar contrast to my ex roommate that was like doing, bicep curls, tricep extension, like arms, every, so it's like,
Yeah.
that was like kind of my very first exposure, I think, kind of seeing that contrast. But yeah, no, I know what you're saying in terms of like the kind of training that you kind of got into. But it's funny how our dads had such an influence,
No, for sure. I mean,
I
yeah,
think. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the funny things is the year that I was playing sevens, where this jersey's from. I remember it was a home tournament. We were hosting the sevens tournament, rugby sevens tournament, and there was a guy who had set up a stand to basically selling jerseys, selling padding, the Kuga rugby padding, where like you wear underneath your shirt, and like Nike Pro combat gear is what they call it as well. Um,
Right.
he had that, and it was on sale for like $20. I'm like, hey, you know what? $20 is something I could pay at that point. I was maybe in the 10th or 11th grade at that point. Um, I turn around and I'm like, you know what? I'm about to go get one of these. Do you have a medium? He's like, if it's in the bag, it's whatever I have. My coach comes up right next to me and he goes, what are you looking for? I'm like, oh, nothing, coach. I'm getting this protective gear so I don't hurt myself. My coach turns and looks at me and goes, if you get that, I'm cutting you from this team right here, right now. I'm like, what? Why? No. Listen, coach, rugby's a scary sport. I need as much protection as I can get. He looks at me dead in the face and he goes, kid, you want protection? Hit the gym, get some muscle on your body. Any more than that, you are getting cut. And it was funny because like there was really no cuts of that on the team at that point, right? Like because it was rugby in America's growing still. But at that point, like even at a high school level, it really wasn't built to where it is now. But for him, it was literally like there were no cuts. I kind of just happened upon rugby by accident. A buddy of mine was trying to get me to play for about a year and a half. And like, nah, dude, I'm playing soccer. I'm playing volleyball. My seasons are filled. I can't add another sport to the mix. One season, I basically didn't play soccer in the spring. And this guy's like, hey, why don't you come out? We're having a season anyway. You're in shape. Like, you know what? I'm in good shape. My fitness levels are up. I've been working out. I'll give it a try. Haven't looked back since. But that's where it started. I took many times off and like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm like, I'm done. I'm hanging up my cleats. Something just kept calling back to me. I'm like, I can't justify to myself to not work. Because for me, exactly like you said, there's different levels of working out. One aspect is working out for keeping yourself into shape. One aspect is for bodybuilding, and one aspect is for sports, just to keep yourself fit. So I always viewed rugby as my reason to go to the gym and work out and be fit. Like I'm working out and staying fit so I can play rugby and become a better player. Now I'm in no way amazing, even though I'd like to be, but as a winger, we kind of just stand there a lot of the time, but it is expected of us that like, we will take off and we will be able to hold our own ground if and when a tackle has to be made, or if and when we get tackled. So that was my reason for continuing to work out. But I know many other people have their own like reasons to why they continued beyond once they started. So what was yours, I guess, if you can put it in like what
the reason for
continuing your fitness journey, like what makes you hungry and what the desire to like, I want to be the best of what I'm trying to do? Or is it, where would you put yourself in the fitness journey?
Yeah, for sure, man. I think for myself, it was like, so the whole thing about noob gains. Obviously, you make your most gains in your first, second years, and then it kind of tapers off. For me, it's interesting because I didn't have a huge genetic response. It's funny. After our last conversation we had, I was looking through some archives of old photos, and people's before and afters after 10 weeks of lifting alone can be pretty drastic, right? Even just because you can overhead squat a sandbag and see some like quad growth. So for me myself, I was like, I didn't see mass. I was training fucking hard. Like I wasn't very smart with what I was doing nutrition wise. I thought I was being smart, but I didn't have drastic progress. And I think that for me, that was a good thing for me at the time, because sometimes what happens is people lift for a couple of months, they see a lot of progress, and then they don't see that progress continuing. And that's why a lot of people stop, right? So I was I see it as a blessing in disguise, because I didn't have that period where it was like, I looked in the mirror after like 3 months and I was like, holy shit, it was I never really got that. So I think that's what enabled me to be hungry and continue. And then I think the next step for me was I I saw, I kind of knew about bodybuilding like as a sport, but I was like, oh, okay. I mean, people pose in like little trunks and like, you know, it looks a little weird, but oh, okay. I mean, let me just watch some like shows and stuff. So I started watching them online. I started watching kind of like the personalities and lifestyles behind these professional guys. And I was like, man, I would love to compete one day because I'd love to see myself in the best light possible, you know?
Yeah.
And another thing too was that I was quite insecure about myself when I was growing up. I was quite skinny, um, but I was a bit insecure. But I think a lot of people, a lot of bodybuilders, some podcasts I've listened to more recently too. It's funny how a lot of them start that way because they're insecure about how they look. But I think what's made me continue is one, I do want to be able to compete one day. I want to see myself in the absolute best version of myself. You know, I'd love to, I do envision of that every single day. The other thing too is that I really love the therapy it gives me and the discipline it gives me outside of my everyday life. You know, for me, it's like whether I want to train today or not, it doesn't matter because it's like part of who I am as a person. You know, I have a push day today. Do I feel like doing a push day? Not really, but like I just do it. Like I know it's part of me getting to that next step to become a better version of myself. So I'd say those components, but I'd say that the main one overall, with I'm being a bit redundant here, but I think it's just I have a vision of myself on stage one day, whether it's next year, whether it's in my 30s. I know I can, if I'm consistent, I will get better and better and better and better, even if
Yeah.
it's 1% every year. And I just see myself that one day, I kind of see myself on stage how I'll look. And to me, that is a goal I'm striving for. And that's what motivates me. And, you know, man, like sometimes I'll be working out and I'm just not into it. And I'll think of that and I'll think of why I started and what it's done to me and my confidence and my journey and how I might look when I'm on that stage one day. And that's that's what gives me the fire. That's what makes me keep going. And I've been consistent since I was 18. Like I've been the longest I ever took off, honestly, was unless I'm doing an actual kind of you know, I'm allowing my body to recover for like 10 days or something like that. I'll do that maybe twice a year or something. I'll force myself to let my body recover. The longest I ever took off, honestly, was like 2 weeks because that was during traveling and stuff like that. But even then, like I always find a way to train, you know, no matter what. So I think like it's been consistent since I was 18. And it's not even just the training, it's been, I love learning about the nutrition aspect of things. But more importantly, what I love is like learning, because I do coaching now. And I think the thing I've learned is the optimal program is not going to be the optimal solution for every person. It's about adherence, what they can do at the end of the day. And I really psychological, mental, and discipline process around, okay, how do I get this person to do a program, stick to it, but have a life, have a lifestyle, and adhere to it in the long term and make incremental progress? That is a very fascinating concept to me. So I think that's another component of well that makes me keep going and want to learn more because
Mm-hmm.
I'm never satisfied with, you know, yeah, I have the optimal program, but like I say, the optimal program is not going to be the best for James down the street who has to work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. You get what I mean? So
Yeah.
that is also another component as well that keeps me going, keeps me fresh and wanting to learn more. Yeah.
Yeah, I can agree with you and anymore. But I remember a solid point you did make is it's not a sprint; it's a marathon. At the end of the day, it's
Yeah.
not what's going to happen, what works for me and what will work for someone else, and it's about constantly learning. Like I was telling my sister the other day, now she's kind of getting that age where she's kind of wanting to get into fitness to kind of get into shape, but and like she looks at me, she's like, hey, you're not in peak shape, and like you're not where in the greatest shape. I'm like, yeah, but the thing is I've been learning about every individual aspect of fitness since thereabouts of 2010. right? So
Right.
it's been about 10
Right.
years that I've been on the journey. So I've been, for me, it's been on and off a lot. I have my good days, I have my bad days. You're more disciplined than me. Like there are certain days where if I genuinely don't feel it, I play it by ear and I listen to my body more than I kind of like say, no, you're pushing through. Because there are many days I've gone to the gym and I've seen like, you know what, I'm just gonna push through, I'll make it, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I get there, I really do not feel good, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna force myself at this point because I don't want my body to react negatively, and
Yeah.
it's a wasted workout, and I feel like mentally, like, dude, I hate when that happens, only because I'm like, I
Yeah.
wasted a day for myself, so it's like a wasted day. But I also have to look at it as like, well, I do have to listen to my body because I don't want to push it where it doesn't want to go, and then it's going to react negatively and impact the next 3 weeks of my training.
Yeah, it's a good point, man. I think like that is something that comes with maturity and years of training too. For myself, like, I guess one point I'll detract from what I was saying before, like, yeah, I'm super disciplined and I'll go hard. If I'm going to the gym and let's say I have on I program for myself doing, 6 sets of 10 with 315 squats and I can barely walk, it's like, at that point, it's like, that's listening to your body. It's like, well, maybe this might not be the most optimal thing.
Yeah.
Um, I'll be honest, 50% of the time I'll do it purely for the mental. Like I'm almost detached from like if I feel like shit because it's just the concept of it. But like, as you're saying, like, but I think when people start reading their bodies and they've been lifting for 6 months, 12 months, it's like, you can't, for one, you're probably recovering at a super high rate at that point anyway, because it's so new to the gym. Your body's just like adapting every single
Yeah.
day. But like what you're saying, because you've been around for 10 years, it's like you're at that point where you know how to read yourself. And I know how to read myself now. I know where it's like, okay, if I do this workout, it's going to affect all my other workouts for the rest of the week and possibly next week as well. And I think during quarantine, that's been a big aspect for me as well. It's like, it's made me realize that I thought I was more in touch with myself than I thought I was, but kind of having this time to work out at home, do kind of slightly different movements, things like that, being very sore on some days, very fresh on other days, having such extremities, it's been like, I think I need and put more emphasis on reading myself, knowing that it's okay not to do a leg workout today. It's going to not impact for the rest of the week and next week and so on and so forth. So I totally agree with what you're saying for sure. But that comes with time, right? That comes
Yeah,
with
for
time
sure.
and
That
maturity.
comes with time.
So yeah, yeah.
And one more thing that comes with maturity is actually learning to leave your ego at the door. I know that's a huge thing that I saw. I went through it. A lot of new people when they begin, they see people who are not as big as they are, or like they seem as though, oh, they're almost to where I am. If this was one thing I went through it and I was put in my place by someone who was older than me. And it's always weird trying to like, there are some people who will learn from it and say, you know what, they understand. But there are others who fight it saying, dude, go away. Like, don't tell me what to do. I'm like, all right, you know what? I just wanted to help. If you don't want
Yeah.
help, I get it. I was there at one point too, but I know there are times where like I would pick up 30s to do bicep curls with after like 6 years of doing it, right?
Yeah.
After a few years of doing it, and I'm like, okay, so this is how I get to where I am.
Right.
And you
Right.
see guys who like, I wouldn't be the most muscular guy in the gym, but like there's guys who literally just come up, pick up 30s and like try to do it with the worst form I've ever seen. And then they
Right.
potentially hurt themselves. And it's like, all right, you know what? I don't even want to bother at this point because I don't want to get an earful. So like, you go away, buddy, like whatever. I'm like, forget it. Huge aspect that was literally leaving your ego at the door and understanding that like sometimes it's not about picking up the 30 the moment you walk into the door. And I always found that to be interesting. Like the 30 is the one way that every guy picks up for bicep curl the moment he walks into the
Yeah.
door, not understanding that like 30s are heavy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's got to do with the size of the dumbbell or something, because like the difference between the size of the
The circle,
diameter of the,
yeah, the
it's like there's
circumference of the
something.
diameter is of 25 versus 30, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's something, and then I think it's just like that male, like primitive ego being like, no, I got to get that next size up. Like, even though it's just 5 pounds, so
Well,
no,
I
I
mean,
know what you're saying.
yeah, one more thing that comes with maturity and lifting and experience is understanding that the 2.5 pound plates are the heaviest plates in the gym. For the
Yeah,
context of
yeah,
like getting to 45 is easy, but push comes to shove, like throw that extra 2.5 pounds on that bar on each side, and you understand how heavy 2.5 pounds each is. You know?
yeah, yeah. An example I actually give some people who are like, as you say, kind of ego lifting is like, if you're attempting a 4 or 5 or 4 plate bench, right? And that's your all at 1 rep max. The difference between 400 and 4 or 5 is
My God,
massive.
it,
Yeah, and
it
that makes the difference between like a record or not a record, right? So I'm like, in that instance, you think it's a lot, right? Yeah, and then when I give that example, they're like, well, it's all relative, right? I'm like, well, yeah, of course it's relative. Like, if you're doing like fucking 50 reps of 2.5 pounds, it's the same relatively to like a 4 or 5 versus 400 bench. Like those every pound counts in a sense. So I
yeah,
think
no, I get it.
yeah, yeah,
Entirely. And the only way that comes is through maturity. You actually, but where I always feel it is like there's a quote by uh leader Otto van Bismarck where he says it's one thing to learn by yourself, right, through your own experiences, but it's another to learn from the experiences of others. So it's like if
mm,
someone's trying to tell you
mm,
these things, like, hey, I've been through it, right? Like I can tell you, or you've been through it, you can tell, listen, this is how it works. And I've spent years learning about it through people who spent years learning about it. And they learn
right,
from people who spent years learning about the same subject. So your dad will know a lot about it. And like if you have any questions, and it's not that you get like learning any other subject or field, you never stop learning.
yeah,
And like there's always things that I after 10 years of having been into the gym on and off, whether I knew whether I was able to do the workout or whether I was just out of curiosity, how do you do this, that kind of always plays into it. Like I'm always asking people, whether it be a trainer at the gym or whether it be someone who I know, or whether it even be someone I have no idea, but they're doing a workout, which I think they know what they're doing better than what I know. So
yeah,
that's kind of a main issue, where I'm like, you know what? It's not even an issue. It's more that like I'm willing to go out and ask them and put my ego aside and say, and maybe it's a girl, and I'm like, she knows what she's doing better than what I know what I'm doing, and
yeah,
she's lifting more weight than me and with better form. I'm like, I'll go ask her. I'm like, sure, please, by all means, teach me what I'm doing wrong, or please teach me how to do it. I think that's another
yeah,
thing
yeah,
that needs to be kind of like looked upon, is that like it's really more about the knowledge than the biology of it, because the knowledge will take you a lot farther than just the biological aspects of it will, and
yeah,
physiological
yeah.
aspects of it will, you know.
I agree. I think one more thing to add to that as well in the context of bodybuilding is, okay, genetics across anything play a massive factor. And I think bodybuilding is an interesting sport because, or I mean, sport, beauty pageant, whatever you want to call it. But I think like it's very surface level, right? So it's what you
Yeah,
see is what you get. And the thing is there are some people on this earth that can lift for 3 months, right? 3 months, that's it,
yeah,
and they can look like they've been training for 7 years. Again, that's a small percent of the genetics right there.
sure,
But here's the thing: sometimes, so as you're saying, right? I've been in this game for 7 years. I'm always learning, but I'm confident. I know how to take somebody as a client and be a good coach, right? But then there may be a guy next to me, Jim, for example. He's been lifting for 6 months, and he has unbelievable genetics, just like crazy muscle insertions,
yeah,
everything like that. The client is looking at him. He's like, he got that in 6 months. Jim, coach me. And that's the thing. That's like a lot of people. And then the thing is, it's harmful for Jim because he suddenly has this ego where he's like, I know everything. I did this in 6 months. Mark's done this for like 7 years, and I look like 35% better than him. And that is what kind of stops you from learning. And I think that it kind of relates to what I was saying before, where I wish I could have made insane progress. I wish I had elite genetics, but I feel like if I didn't, I mean, the fact that I don't is what enables me to have this mindset now to actually learn things, take things on, and kind of realize that I can be wrong sometimes, and that is something I always accept. It's like, so yeah, I think it's just another point to what you're saying, where especially in bodybuilding, especially in the coaching scene, especially in the nature of how results are given in this kind of area, is like, it's very hard to not have an ego, and genetics is a massive component of that as well that people don't actually realize. So yeah.
No, for sure. Actually, one more point that you brought up was it's a lot of people think it's literally just going to the gym and like making sure your body works and making your body move. In fact, one of my first trainers actually used to tell me, is like, no, the first thing we're going to do for the first 2 months of training was literally get your head right. It's literally
Mm,
more mental than a lot of people actually put into perspective. It's about making sure your head is in the right spot. And that's kind of what for me, it's I go to the gym to clear my head sometimes, right?
mm,
It's nothing more than like, it's a temple to me. It's a place where I go. It helps me clear my head, work through a lot of emotions that I'm going through the day-to-day stresses of life, frustrations, even happiness, to keep myself calm and be like, all right, listen, even though you're happy at this moment, you have to understand you have to keep on working. It's not a one time, like, I work, I did something, I'm good, I'm happy, I'm done. It's, you still have to put in the days and the hours and the reps, which is
mm,
where, when you stand on the stage, you kind of understand it as like, hey, this is what I did. And it's not just
mm,
standing on the stage and understanding this is where I am. It's
mm,
putting in the minutes and the hours and the days and the months and the years that it takes to get there. It's a
mm.
marathon, and it all starts with getting your head right.
It goes back to what's your why. And I think especially when I coach people now, again, I don't have a massive pool of clients. I'm not doing this as a full-time job. I mean, ideally I would love to one day. But I am learning to, turn down clients, because I think what I do, I have was one client, I'll keep him anonymous. He's
Sure.
in Singapore actually, but the first time, so I do a consultation session for 1 hour,
Hmm.
sit down with them, have all these questions, blah, blah. And I told him very kindly, I said, your why isn't strong enough. And I don't think I would be the best coach for you. And I feel like I'd be taking money from you. And he had a bit of a reaction to that. And I think that he came back a month later, and we had another consultation session, and his why was much stronger. And I think, I'm not saying this method of what I did is some like the best way to do it or whatever. It's just an example. But I think it comes down to your why. And I think for me, my why, just like yours, is so much stronger than, I mean, bodybuilding is my life. I love it. I'll always be doing it in some capacity, but I'm almost detached from the physical results. Like I'm honestly almost detached from it. Like, I'll train in a hoodie like all day, and it's like, because my why is so much stronger, and it's like what you're saying. If you can't answer your why,
Yeah.
then you're fucked. Like that's
Yeah.
it. And you're just gonna stop after a while. So it's about constantly reassessing that as well, because sometimes we forget, right? Yeah, like you said, at the end of the day, it's also therapeutic. So yeah, what's your why is very important too. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And each person has a different why, like you said. And
yeah.
it's really important for everyone who's trying to get in to kind of understand that. Um, and it's, I don't know about you, but I can actually see that in the gym as to like who has a why and who's working towards that why versus someone who's just trying to show up because they're trying to justify. Now, it's not that there's anything wrong with the people who are doing it. It's just that
Definitely.
it's not, it's, what ends up happening is they're the New Year's resolutioners who, they don't see the results within like the first month of doing it.
Yeah.
Their why of what they want to do is not strong enough, and then they kind of are dissuaded and like kind of, maybe this isn't for me. I knew it was, or they'll kind of get into themselves as, I knew this wasn't for me. It's not about that. It's about reassessing, saying, listen, sometimes it doesn't have to be about you, it could be for your family, it could be for your friends, it could be for your
Mm,
significant other, your parents, whoever it may be for. You could say, I want to get healthier so that like my friend who basically said, I want to get into shape so that my parents can also look at me and say, listen, he's doing it. Maybe they'll get into shape as well tomorrow, and they'll feel
Yeah.
motivated by it. And like, it'll be better for them in the long run. So sometimes the why is something that you as an individual have to figure out, but it's really important, like you said, because it really does help you get those gains better. If you can't see where you want to be, it
Mm.
really makes it difficult for you to get there. And that's what makes most people quit within the first 3 weeks to 3 months.
I agree. And I think like, so one thing I've been focusing on more now is sort of the clients I go for now are more for people in their 40s and 50s who are high net worth individuals,
Mhm.
who have very busy lives. And I have conversations with them, and sometimes I mean, I had a conversation with someone literally 2 weeks ago, and he said like, my wife doesn't see me how I was before in certain respects, and it's quite eye opening. And I think his why was so touching for me, because it was like, also doing this for myself. I know I just can't continue down this route going this way. And I could tell, he hit somewhat of a bottom, but by finding that bottom, he's found his why. And everyone has a different why. That's another thing I tell like very young people as well. It's like, you don't have to be a bodybuilder. I mean, it's like, you don't have to be this guy that stands on stage and, is this massive guy, things like that. Everyone's why is different. Like, um, so at the end of the day, it's like, find your why, be brutally honest with yourself, reassess, and trust me, you'll be so much happier. You'll have a better lifestyle, and you'll be able to have adherence. So, yeah, I'm with you, man,
One more
100%.
point is actually your why can change. And that's actually one of the
Mm,
greatest things ever, is that why can change. And that change of your why, because I know there are many times where I've kind of I've hit a plateau, and I've had to reevaluate my why and what I wanted to do. And that kind
mm,
of helped me break that plateau, which I would have been for maybe even a year. 6 months to a year,
mm,
I would have been at a plateau. I'm like, dude, I'm not seeing any more changes, but I'm also not where I want to be. Have I hit a stop? Is this it? Can I
mm.
not get any better? But sometimes I just go back, reassess my why, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. And maybe if I look at it from this perspective, and the moment that happens, I start to see results within a week, which I did not see for like 6 months to a year before
Right.
that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think one more thing to add to that too is like, people look at what's your why as kind of like this very, I mean, sometimes it can be a deep existential thing. It is at the core of it, but like, you should be open to reassessing your why. Look at it as a very positive thing. Like, and look at it as a friend inviting to the table, having a discussion. When people have a mindset of reassessing their why as a very positive thing, and it's
Mhm.
a really good thing. Like, you know what? I've been lifting very hard for 3 years. I don't want to be a bodybuilder, but man, like, I want to be very fit. But man, does that mean like, I'm weak because I am changing my goal? No, it's not. Like, that is the strongest decision you can ever make, you know?
Yeah.
So I think like, people have to look at it as a very positive thing. Always reassess, always reassess. I'm always reassessing all the time, whether it's like sitting down and being like Raid Man in a notebook, or if it's like me just going for a walk or having this podcast.
Yeah.
But it's just allowing yourself to be open and looking at it as, this is a positive thing. This is always a positive thing by assessing myself. Yeah.
No, for sure. And I think that also speaks to the industry as a whole. Like especially nowadays with social media, like people just see all over the place, like social media influencers with like living their best lives, and like, I want that. But it's like, hey, you
Mm,
actually have to look at it. It's like, is that really what you want? Right? Because all that
yeah.
glitters, all that shimmers is not gold, or all that glitters isn't gold. You have to kind of understand that there's a lot more that goes into it. But what's your view as the industry as a whole? Like, where is it going? Well, what can be done? What's some advice that you give to someone who's either has just started, or is thinking about starting, or somewhere in the
Mm,
middle of those two? As
mm-hmm.
a
Yeah.
trainer, as a bodybuilder, and as a overall fitness enthusiast.
Yeah, I mean, I have a question for you. I mean, what is your kind of take then on, I mean, obviously we follow these people, we're exposed to them on social media, things like that. I know for me, one thing I had to be honest with myself a couple of years ago was I I followed like almost 10,000 people. Now I follow about 700. Where I was like, this is affecting me mentally, man. I'm just like, I feel like garbage all the time because it's like I'm just seeing people with edits all the time, and it's just like, fuck, man, you know. So I started unfollowing, and I was very conscious of who I'm following and what I'm seeing, and that actually helped me more mentally.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about your take on like your perspective in terms of like, you know, your exposure, and do you mentally like work on what you're exposed to, or have you kind of just been like, you know what, I'm above that now, it doesn't matter? I'm actually curious about your kind of take. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm not like that much over it. I try to think I am. For like when I talk to my sister, I'm like, oh, you know, I'm over that. Like I'm 10 years older than my sister, so it's like, hey, you know, I'm over that. I'm not a kid anymore. But it's like, no, deep down, it really does hit. Like you see these guys who are in great shape to their lives, and I'm like, but I'm naturally doing it. I'm not taking steroids, not out here.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not passing judgment on anyone who does. If
Yeah.
that's your cup of tea, please by all means do it. I'm not condoning people who take pre-workouts or supplements, all on you. I know that
Yeah.
I, for me, especially as an athlete, I know sometimes that many of our the organizations and the places we play, they do test. So
Mm,
I personally couldn't risk it. That's why I never did it. Um,
right.
but at the same time, like I know that I have had to unfollow a lot of people on social media at one point, exactly like you said. I followed a lot of influencers trying to say, hey, I thought at one point that if I see more of it, that like I will attract that, kind of like the book and documentary The Secret, where like um the theory of attraction, where like if you follow a lot of it, that you will get, and that's what you're exposing yourself to,
Mm,
you will see that eventually. But I found that kind of to be a little bit, I didn't unfollow all of them, but I did actually find myself unfollowing the ones who I thought were like too unrealistic to achieve.
mm,
um because either it's you're not factoring in how many hours those people are spending in the gym every day to get
mm,
to that level of physique that they get. Like I remember um Tom Hardy when he became Bane, when he got
mm,
bulked up out of nowhere to get Bane. I watched a video where I don't remember if it was Athlete Next or somebody else, who they were like, you have to understand this guy's, I think it was his trainer who was getting interviewed. He's like, yeah, we went for 4 90-minute sessions a day. And the remainder of the
mm.
time, either he was on set or I was the one making sure he's eating and this at every moment in like every of his.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not reasonable to attain. Now this guy
Yeah.
got bulked up, got yoked, it got
Yeah.
so strong for Dark Knight Rises. But I was like,
Mm,
but the moment you look at it and be like, well, wait a minute, and they were like, in 6 months. I'm like, that's not feasible. Even if he was 100% clean, which
mm,
he may not be, but the sheer aspect of a normal person having that much free time to spend, where I'm spending
mm,
what 6 hours a day in the gym, right?
mm.
And having
Yeah.
more than just the time, having the energy levels to have workouts 6 times a day, or sorry, 6 hours a day, is something else altogether. I found
Yeah.
myself having to unfollow a lot of those kind of people who I was like, listen, this is actually doing more damage to me than it is like attracting what I want. Because I'm like, I can't, with school, with sports, with helping my family and being at home and homework and everything else, I found myself saying, you know what, I need to take a step back, unfollow a lot of people, because this is doing me more harm than it is good.
Yeah.
But that was
I'm
pretty
with
much where
you.
I was. So I'm with you with like, sometimes you have to unfollow the people who are exactly where in their prime, versus and comparing yourself and saying, why am I not there? Now it can very well be that you're the same age as that person. Like I know
Mm,
Jeff Side
yeah.
or Seed, he's roughly our age, and what ends up happening is he's in the greatest shape of his life. And like you
Yeah.
said earlier, that's a lot of genetics plays into it. Now, I'm not taking away that he worked for it, but he started working out when he was 12. I didn't start till I
Mm.
was 16 at least, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for
Yeah.
him, he was
Yeah. Yeah.
training to basically get almost bodybuilding status from the age of like from his early teenage years. Whereas
Mm.
for me, I was like, I can't achieve that because our end goal is different. Our what we make of it is different, and I'm looking to sustain it when do what's good for me,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to like
Yeah.
achieving it and then hurting my body in the long run, and I'm going to be the one in suffering later on. So that's my
Yeah.
individual take, but it's I can see where a lot of people will get. I don't want to say that get into trouble, but like they'll look at it and only see what's on the on the face of it, versus really going deep down and understanding what each individual is doing. And I think that's what does a lot more harm than good in the industry in itself. You know?
I agree. I agree. I think even just the last thing to add to that too is like, one thing I assessed was, does this bring negative energy to me?
Mm.
Yes, unfollow. Does this bring negative energy to me? No. I mean, I follow a lot of like, the Jeff Sides, the Kai Greens, the Phil Heath. I follow these guys because they, I'm at a place where I know that, okay, they're the genetic elite. They work very hard and they inspire me. But then obviously there are people that I felt were bringing me negative energy, and there's nothing wrong with them. It's nothing against them. It's like life, sometimes people
Yeah.
bring you negative energy, and it's like, it's not you, it's me. It's the most generic quote of all time, but it's true. It's no hard feelings on that person. It's just that for me and my mental health, it's like not the best thing ever. um but I think people have to realize also that genetics is a large part of it, but it's not an excuse. And I think people, I know it's a big trendy thing right now, especially the past couple of years, is making videos online about natty or not, is this person natural, things like that. But I think at the end of the day, it's like, what takes me 10 years to build a physique of, if I'm consistent, and it comes back to the why. If my why is there
Yeah.
too, I will achieve a great physique. Anyone with terrible genetics can achieve a great physique if their why
Yeah.
is there. So I think at the end of the day, it's like people have to realize that genetics is a massive component, but it's not an excuse. And I think it's important to realize and distinguish those two. And it takes time to distinguish those two. I can look at a physique now, and I think especially in bodybuilding, it's sort of, I have a very good eye for it too. I can see muscle insertions. I can see, like, where someone's lat inserts, where someone's bicep inserts. Okay, why their muscle belly looks that way. I can look at them and be like, okay, he probably weighs this, and probably weighs this on stage, things like that. But that comes with time.
Yeah.
And I think that at the end of the day, it's like, what is bringing you negative energy, being okay with departing from that, and then also distinguishing genetics as a massive factor, but also not as an excuse. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. Even if I'm not talking about bodybuilding per se, like even if it was fitness, I know Adele had her latest, like the picture that got released where she lost
Yeah.
like close to 100 pounds, and it's like, wait a minute, like my God, that's amazing and good on her. But like you look at the aspect, it's like, okay, well, and for her, I can't say whether it's genetics or not, but like for her, it was effort. It was literally effort and work that went into it. But like I looked up the diet that she was on, and I'm like, I'm like, is this something that I would want to do? It's like with fad diets, what's your view on those? Because I know one aspect we were going to go over was nutrition. I know for me, I try personally to keep it like an 80-20 diet, only because I know that like I'm trying to eat clean, but I don't want to restrict myself so much as to like I'm not going to eat like a piece of a candy bar, or like I'm not going to overindulge and eat a whole dozen donuts, but like I'm not going to say no to half a donut. Like I'll split it with my sister or my mom or my dad. Like, you know what? Yeah, like we'll get one donut split into four. So I get my body satiated with the fact that I've had a piece of a donut, but at the
Mm.
same time, like I'm not going overboard and I'm keeping like 80 to 85% of my diet fairly clean in the process.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to go about it, actually. The 80-20-90-10 rule. I'll give an interesting analogy, actually. I kind of thought about this a couple of weeks ago. I'm starting to use it with some of my clients too, is that it's a bit of a weird one, but I think it does encapsulate my principles quite nicely. It's like, imagine you're hosting a party, yeah? And you've got a big house. You're trying to look at the quota of how many people you want to bring. Do you want to invite your ex? Not really. Do you want to invite that person that you got into a fight with 10 years ago? Not really. But the objective is you want to have the best party of all time,
Yeah.
right? So the way you should map it out is you invite everyone to your party, okay? Just stay with me here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You invite everyone to your party. Don't exclude anyone. If you bring everyone to your party, even the worst person, let's say you had a horrible experience with your ex, right? But her ex brings someone that works at a firm that you're applying to,
Yeah.
and you get what I mean? So like, let's just put that on a sort of a butterfly effect. People should look at that in terms of nutrition. So before people go keto, before people go on all these different diets, it's like, first of all, invite everything to the table, okay? You want to invite every single nutrient that's possible, right? And then from there, then that's when you can start streamlining. I think when people start going cold turkey and they're like, yeah, I'm on a chicken, rice, and broccoli diet for 6 weeks, for one, that's not sustainable, and any progress you made is not going to be good for the long term. But the thing is like, when you pointed to the candy bar, right? Or chocolate or whatever like that, is that I think you can actually, especially in bodybuilding as well, you can actually look at those things as part of making you a better lifter. I know for myself, right? Let's say I'm dieting down, I'm on 2,900 calories, and it's been 7 days. Okay, I need a bit of bump in calories for this 8th day. I have a leg day. If you bump those calories, right? Let's say I eat the same things, but then I add in like a huge bowl of Lucky Charms or two, right? If you do things right, I can actually lose weight the next day. Now, that's just a very specific example. But the thing is like, by doing that, that's what enables me to stick to the program that I'm on. So I think at the end of the day, it's like, invite everything to the party, and then from there makes sense that will enable you to adhere to that diet. Now you can go into macros and but I think at the end of the day, it's like, by doing exclusion, that is not a long-term solution. It's just not a long-term solution. And I don't even really like the word diet, to be honest, because diet in itself, it's like synonymous with the concept of like restriction, right? And I think that, of course, you are being restrictive as you diet down, right? But I think at the end of the day, it's like, everything can play a positive part. And I think one more thing to add too is when people say clean eating, right? I think people have a misconstrued perception of what clean eating is, because, for example, one thing I bring to work a lot is chicken and rice, right? It's just very easy. Wake up in the morning, take out my crock pot, my rice cooker. You'll always have someone at work that comments on how you're eating, right? It's just part of I've had everything, right? Everything under the sun. And they'll say rice is unhealthy. And it's like, well, I'm eating white rice for a specific purpose. It's like, well, it's not nutrient dense. I'm like, well, one, I'm eating it for that reason, actually, because in the grand scheme of my whole day, white rice is something that I can easily digest. It's going to enable me to get the carbohydrates that I need in, and it's going to fuel the workout that I'm going to have when I go to work, go home an hour from now. And then it's like, everyone has an opinion, but the thing is that every food can play a role in reaching you towards your goal. Something as nutrient like dense as kale, something as the most non-existent nutrient dense thing on planet Earth as white rice can play a role. Everything plays a role. Invite everything to the party, and that can be overwhelming. I understand that, and that's why I think it's good to have a coach. Just plugging that service on here. But I think at the end of the day, it's like, start there. Start at the point of, I'm inviting everything. Okay, every nutrient, every macro is going to be on the table, and that's my starting place. And you'll have a much healthier mindset, because you having that candy bar is what enables you to stick to that 80-20. You might talk to someone, maybe 10 podcasts from now, and he might be like, yeah, 90-10 is the rule. But at the end of the day, you're adhering to the 80-20, he's adhering to that 90-10.
Sure.
That's what enables them to make that progress. So
No, of course. Yeah, that's so you have, so like I said, I always go back to I'm listening to my body more than I'm listening to anything else. And then one kind of piggybacking off of a point that you made earlier about like the moment you sometimes, I know I was talking to someone, they're like, a lot of people will like um turn around and say, you know what, I'm gonna start eating healthy, I'm gonna start eating clean, I'm gonna have a salad tomorrow. But the issue
Mm,
is you just went from consuming a whole lot of calories every day and your body's
yeah,
used to that. So what happens is you're basically going to cut most of those calories out by eating a salad and transition to that to basically being like, well, wait a minute, now I'm actually hungry at like 11 o'clock at night or 10 p.m. Or at 10 p.m. I'm not supposed to
yeah,
be eating at that point, but like my stomach's gonna be growling, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, you know what? Maybe one cookie's not too bad. That one becomes
yeah,
two, two becomes three, and then you're kind of throwing your whole balance off. So that kind
yeah,
of does work into it. Another huge thing, actually, interestingly enough, because I don't eat meat personally, I don't.
yeah,
I actually have found that like I faced this a lot when I was starting my fitness journey, and a lot of guys at the gym would be like, "Oh, well, you know, you're really shooting yourself in the leg." I'm like, "Why do you say that?" Like, well, you know, you're not getting your proteins in. You have to take like,
yeah,
you're not eating meat, you're not getting your proteins in. If you're not drinking protein shakes, you're not getting your proteins in. I'm like, well, I mean, my comeback at that point was one of two things. It was A, why do I lift more than you? If that's the case,
right,
why am I bigger than you? Why do I lift more than you? If
yeah,
you have a not you specifically, but whoever's saying that to me would be like, you
yeah,
have a pretty much of a nothing more than a carnivorous diet. I have a vegetarian diet. Why am I bigger than you? Why am I lifting more weight than you? Right. So like that, I
right,
think at that point your argument kind of falls apart. But
yeah,
I mean, hey, I've survived years of being an athlete as a complete vegetarian. Um, I didn't even look at it as like a diet, like you said. Also, I didn't look at it as a diet. I just looked at it as like whatever my mom made as food of that day was what we ate. Like we had no option, but that's what we eat, right? Whatever
right, right,
what we eat, that's how I grew up. And I'm like, for me, it was more work out more than what you eat. But growing up, that is, I know that was also something which was like what Michael Phelps used to do when he used to eat like 10,000 calories a day, 20,000 calories
mm,
a day. But as I've grown, I've also kind of looked at it as like, you know what, I do have to kind of cut back on certain things as well. And a lot of people do understand that as they grow, but what is your take on
yeah.
like that as a concept for someone who's starting their fitness journey? Kind of how would you start about it? You did mention briefly like just looking at yourself and kind of understanding that and partially going clean, but do you have to defer a great level from your current diet, or would
Mm.
it be more of a gradual process to get to cleaning up your diet altogether?
Yeah, so first thing I'll say is that you have to understand technically any diet works.
Mhm.
Okay. From a theoretical perspective, any diet works: carnivore, vegan, keto, whatever, right? Secondly, the most important thing, if you look at it as in terms of a pyramid, right, of importance, at the
Yeah.
very bottom before training, nutrition, supplements, everything, micronutrients, is adherence. What can you adhere to? So the first thing you should look at, so I'll approach this from the standpoint of what you're saying. Someone starting out, you don't have the luxury of a coach. You're just kind of looking online, things like
Mhm.
that. The first place I'd ask people to start looking at is look at your calories and macronutrients you're taking in. I don't care what diet you have, right? If you're vegetarian, vegan, whatever, right? Look at your overall calories and then look at your macronutrients, okay? Because what happens a lot of the time, most people, especially, again, it depends on your goal. So I'm just going to pretend it's someone who's trying to get in shape, right? So what happens a lot of the time is people are actually in a massive protein deficit. That's usually the first flag. People think they're eating lots of protein, like, yeah, I eat my peanut butter, I have my steak, blah, blah, blah. But what you should do is just for a week, I would force people to track the, can use my fitness pal, whatever it is, track your calories, track your macros, don't do anything, okay? You're going to learn a lot about yourself. At the end of the day, it's what data can you use to inform yourself to make you better? Think about it. Like, why do training programs exist? What are they in essence? It's essentially data that you can control. It's the same thing with nutrition. Look at the exact same thing. It's like programming your nutrition. So the first place I would get people to start at is, what are your calories? What are your macronutrients? Again, I'm approaching this from the standpoint, they don't have a coach, they're just doing things online, right? Or they're listening to this. So start there, inform yourself from there, and then realize the areas that you are overcompensating in and the areas that you are deficient in, right? And then look at it in terms of, what can I actually adhere to? What can I actually do? Some people have a very unhealthy relationship with certain foods. That's another whole topic entirely. I still think it's fine to eat foods that you really enjoy in moderation. But at the end of the day, look at it in terms of the framework of what are your total calories and then what are your macronutrients. If you can get that under control, like you realize, okay, I eat about 3,000 calories and I stay the same weight. But however, of these 3,000 calories, I'm eating like 50 grams of protein. Okay, you know what? I'm going to increase my protein intake and I'm going to replace that with some of my fats or carbs or things like that. That's the best place to start at, because when you have a full understanding of that framework, that's when you're going to realize that, okay, I can do the 80-20, I can do the 90-10, I can eat foods that aren't micronutrient dense. It's about what my total day looks like, what my total week looks like. And then you get the bigger picture. So I think it sounds a little intimidating, a lot of things I'm saying to a first timer, but the first thing you do is just collect data on what you do every single day, what you're eating. You might realize that, the thing that you cook for yourself every night is like, oh my God, I didn't know it was this many calories, or oh my God, I didn't know, I thought it was way more protein, things like that. And it's just about having those realizations. That's where you should start from. That's where I started from. Take it from someone that I was in the university dining hall and I would bring again, this is an extreme example, but I would bring my scale to the dining hall. This is when I was in Northeastern. Yeah, I had no friends either. So I was this weird guy, like sitting in the corner, like with my scale. And I was so extreme. I'd measure every little chickpea. I'd take off like a little quarter, things like that. Obviously, that's an extreme example. But the point is that it's about what is your mindset start. And once you can understand food from that perspective, then you're empowered forever. That's when you can take on, you can have a vegetarian diet. You can have any diet that you want to technically stick to. Again, there's more optimal diets, in my opinion, to, you get a better body composition, but that doesn't mean anything unless you can adhere to it, right? So I have a client that is a vegetarian, for example, right? And, he makes great progress. He looks pretty good. And the thing is that, but it comes from a place of him understanding what he's taking in every single day. One more thing I'll add to that too is, you make a good point. There are many people, I have clients where it's like, my wife makes my food, I don't have a choice, things like that. But at the end of the day, that doesn't have to influence, doesn't mean you can't eat it, right? Again, it depends on your goals. But the thing is you got to look at it in terms of your total day, the total week, total month, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, what does my whole day look like? It's like, oh, I ate carbs at 10 p.m. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It's like, what is your total calorie intake? If you eat the majority at 6 p.m., 8 p.m., 10 p.m., like myself, I'm someone that likes to eat at night, like a lot of people. It doesn't matter because it's what your total day looks like. And, when I'm home for Christmas, or I haven't been home for Christmas for a long time, my mom's making dinner. One thing I would say is, hey, mom, what are you making for dinner tonight? Oh, I'm making this, this, and this. Okay, I look in my head. All right, okay, I'll make sure to get some more protein in today. Okay, you know what? That sounds like a very calorie-dense meal. I'll bring back the carbs and fats for that throughout the day so I can compensate for dinner. So that's my short answer, is that download an app, like just start collecting data on yourself. The more data you have and can control, that's going to empower you forever. Yeah.
Sure. So kind of working on where we are now, actually, training in the COVID-19 era that we're living in, where gyms are closed. I don't know there are many people who are on both sides of it. Some people are blessed to have home gyms. And when I mean home gyms, I mean like actually like a whole on squat rack, bench to bench press, weights to do it. essentially an at-home, like full-on gym. Where do you find your motivation to keep on going in a time, especially where we are now, where the gyms aren't open? Like people, for me, I go out a lot more. I'm trying to do a lot more outdoor work, kind of get some vitamin D, and especially since we're locked in,
Mm,
especially here in America. But we are kind of locked in. But it's not that bad where like I can't go out. It's more that I were trying to protect myself and my
mm,
family from exposure and potentially even overexposure from going
mm.
outside. So maybe like once or twice a day, we'll go sit outside, go get a walk in, get a run, et cetera, et cetera. Come back to a few push-ups. But how are you finding your motivation to keep strict to your diet, or to your, for lack of a better term, diet and workout
Mm.
routine, while you're at a place where you really don't have access to your gym where you normally work
Yeah,
out?
yeah. Yeah, it's a good question, mate. I think one thing it's realizing that again, it's the whole what's your why thing, but we've covered that. I think the other thing, there's two other components as well. One, it's what data can I control? It kind of goes back to what's before, right? I can control what I put in my mouth, and can I control my training optimally? No, but I can still program a training that enables me to keep some gains, make some gains in areas that I wouldn't have otherwise, lose gains in some other areas that it's okay, but I'm going to prime myself to get back into the gym. So, for example, I had a huge self assessment session where I said, you know what? I'm probably going to lose gains in my legs. That's okay. That is okay. I will make them back when I get back into the gym. What are areas I can control? Okay, I can definitely make progress in my arms. All you need is a pair of dumbbells, right? Cool. Do I like training arms? Not really. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, I want to be making progress. So I know I can increase some size of my arms, and I feel I have been doing that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it comes back to what can I control, what can't I control, and being okay with that. And then also a part of a motivation aspect of it too is that, how can I prime myself to make that next step when gyms reopen again? I usually squat heavy. My lower back usually is quite sore, not in like a skeletal way, it's just muscularly, so
Mm-hmm.
in a safe way, hopefully. My posterior chain sometimes is maybe lagging behind, things like that. So it's like, you know what? I'm going to put myself in a position so when I'm back in the gym, my posterior chain is better. My legs are refreshed. I'm able to make progress on my squatting, knowing that when I go back, I'm not going to be able to put on the same weight. I don't mind putting on one plate on each side for a whole week and being okay with that. So my motivation comes from one, yeah, what's your why? Two, what data can I control? And three, I think a very big trait of successful bodybuilders is they're quite routine people.
Mm-hmm.
Something I've been kind of learning more. I've been listening to some podcasts, more psychologists, and it's funny. People have different personality types. I'm quite a routine person.
Mm-hmm.
So every day I do 10,000 steps. I usually eat at a certain time. I wake up at a certain time. That's not to say I'm a complete robot, but my thing is I get lots of pleasure out of knowing that you know, okay, I've eaten my meal at this time. I went for my walk at this time. I trained at this time. And another thing too is like last night, for example, I had a nice big cheat meal. But I never feel guilty about those cheat meals because I know it's within like my programming, so to speak. So that keeps me motivated. Yesterday, I was like, man, I'm gonna get like two massive burgers, two massive things of French fries, and I'm stoked for that, right? So throughout that day, that's keeping me motivated. And I know that later today, I'm going to be seeing my girlfriend for a bit. And I don't get to see her very much during quarantine. So it's just being grateful. So I think the third component I'm saying is just being grateful. I'm so grateful that I'm able to actually um, increase my progress in areas that maybe I wouldn't emphasize otherwise. I'm giving my posterior chain and legs a break that I wouldn't otherwise. So it's just being grateful, What's your why? Second component I was saying before, I can't remember, but and then just being grateful as well. That keeps you more than motivated. And I think the final kind of message I'd make is that some people just have to realize that, life is bigger than and how you look, right? And we can always improve in other areas. At the end of the day, it's like I said it earlier. The big reason why the gym means a lot to me is that it made me successful in other areas. I was not a good student. I became an honest student. I was not very good at my job. I became good at my job. And it's because I learned principles from that and translate that into my everyday life. So I think just realizing that it's bigger than you. It's you can take principles from there and apply them to other areas of your life. And at the end of the day, trust me, if you lose a little bit of gains, it might be actually good for you in the long term, because when you go back into it, not only are you going to make those gains back, right, very quickly,
Yeah.
but also you've given your body a much deserved and a good rest as well. Your body needs that rest. My body's needed that rest.
Yeah.
Squatting 3 times a week is not like conducive for a super healthy body. So that would be my kind of long-winded answer on what keeps me motivated.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I know last week when we were talking, it was like the while for many aspects, we are living in a pandemic state right now. If there's a silver lining, especially from a fitness aspect of the COVID-19 pandemic, it would be giving your body time to rest, heal itself, whatever if be it through, like you said, squatting 3 times a week. For me, I remember when I injured my ankle beginning of February. This is honest. I was kind of on the fence because I was unable to do any leg work. I was like, honestly, I was so anxious to turn around and basically be like, well, how am I actually going to go out and start working out again? I'm like, I want to. There was an innate desire to start working out legs again, but I
Mm,
knew that like I didn't want to go to a certain point and injure myself and elongate that process of how long I'm off my feet. And
mm,
I'm now starting to look at it and I was starting to get frustrated. Like, why did this have to happen now? And during my last potential season of collegiate rugby,
mm,
and I'm looking at this now like, well, wait a minute. I am giving my ankle time to rest. I'm not
mm,
forcing myself and being a little bit of my ego, but also desire to squat and do leg day, which I actually kind of happen to like, being that I like a lot more compound workouts. A
mm,
lot of deadlifting, a lot of bench, a lot of squats, overhead press, et cetera,
mm.
et cetera. I like doing that stuff, and that's where I see the most gains when I work out. But I couldn't do any lower body stuff. Doctor said no go. Athletic trainer said no go. So I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm off my feet.
Yeah.
But I'm like, honestly looking at this now after our discussion last week, is like, this is a blessing in disguise, or the silver lining is that my ankle is getting the rest that it needs to heal up, so that when I get back, whenever the gyms reopen over here or wherever, that I'm able to re-get my muscle memory is going to kick in and say, hey, I'm able to lift this much weight, and I'm able to
Yeah.
get those gains back, which I've lost over the past how many ever months we've been off out of the gym.
It's important people realize, like, one, it's that old cliche. Sometimes you take one step back to take 2 steps forward.
Yeah.
And that definitely applies to the gym for sure. People are I mean, I think people hopefully a lot have learned now, but people are freaking out about losing their gains, stuff like that. It's like, look, for the long term, I if you've been lifting for a few years, it's probably a good thing this happened, actually. And also, one more little aspect to learn, add in there too, is that I'm pretty structured in terms of my training. I'm like you. I focus a lot on compounds, the progressive overload of those elements, things like that. Now I'm doing like chins and weighted dips, things like that, things I wouldn't really do otherwise. And weighted push-ups. And I've actually taken some elements from
Mhm.
this, where when gyms reopen, I'm actually going to continue working out once a week at home as part of my 5-6 day split. And that's something I wouldn't even dreamed of before.
Yeah.
So it's like I've actually learned some things now that I can take into when gyms open again. So yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's good you have that grateful mindset. And mate, if you have a fucked ankle, like yeah, the last thing I'd be thinking about is doing like any compound lift. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
this is a good thing for you for sure.
Honestly, like I remember when I went to the doctor beginning of March or around mid-March, she did tell me, she's like, you know what, like, yeah, you can start working out on your ankle again, but like take it very, very slow. And I'm
Right,
like, for me, that didn't really like initially transfer. I'm like, all right, yeah, you know what, slow's like I'm going in, I'm gonna do like 95-pound squats. I'm like, but now that I think about it, I'm like, no, like I went back after that like once. I tried to do the bar and man, I could barely squat the bar for 5 reps, like one set of
right,
5 reps, and I started feeling my ankle get tight, and I'm like, okay, this is a really bad idea, right?
yeah,
I should
yeah,
not
yeah,
have done this. Now, it's not to say that while my ankle was injured that I was not working out. I was working out. I was going to the gym 3 to 4 days a week. I cut down because I didn't want to kind of overload my body, my upper body, and like
right,
not get an even split and kind of get disproportionate in my levels of strength as well as muscle mass. But at the same time, I was like, I do need to keep the discipline up of to keep on going so I don't lose it, because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, you know?
yeah, yeah. Totally agree, man. Definitely agree.
So a few more last parting words. Training, industry, mindset, what would be like, if in 2 sentences or less, your approach and how to keep going?
Make it a lifestyle. What's your why? Get a coach now. I'm kidding.
Hit him up, guys.
But
His link
I'm
will be in
plugging
the
every
bio
chance I
below.
can get. Awesome. I'd say those two, and then also progress as best you can. Everyone's going to be progressing at different rates. At the end of the day, it's just about making that one step forward. And trust me, you be kind to yourself as well. Just be kind to yourself. Remember to be kind to yourself. Something I have to remind myself of too. So that would be, I think, the main things. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah,
Anyway, we've been at it for a long time. I know it's late for me. You have a busy day ahead of you. Um,
yeah,
we
mate.
will
I
keep
really
in
appreciate you
touch.
having me on.
But no, thank
Yeah,
you for
yeah,
coming on board. I if you're down, I'll leave your link in the bio if anybody wants to hit him up. Training advice, please hit him up. He knows a lot more about the subject than I do. I one thing that I would say is keep on learning. But don't ever forget the inception point as to like, this is the point where I choose to change my life, or this is where I started and this is where I want to go. But that's it from me. Mark, thank you so much for being on board. We will keep in touch. And hope to have you back someday, buddy. Yeah.
yeah. Thanks, mate. Yeah.
All
Last
right,
thing I'll
bud.
say real quick is, yeah, awesome, man. I love the message of your podcast, and like I really love the concept of it. So I hope to see it become successful, man. I'm sure it will.
Thank you, bud. Thank you so much. Um,
Cheers.
no, man. Yeah, we will keep in touch. I'll try to get you on sometime in the future. We do have a few more things we can talk about later, but um, as always, thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.
Cheers.